Today we're going to go through building a bike out of a box. Quite often when you buy a bike from a bike shop, it's already set up. In some cases you may buy a bike online or from another source, and it'll come packaged up pretty much like this. You put the seat post in, you pull it straight out of the box, put it in the stand, and this is how it'll come. Can look a bit daunting, but it's actually very easy to sort out. Before we start, just going to go through the tools you might need for the job of building your new bike. Got a couple of screwdrivers, one flat blade, one Phillips, a selection of Allen keys, so ranging from 6mm down to 2.5mm, some side cutters for cutting off the packaging mainly, cable cutters for making a good job of adjusting your gear cable length, your shock pump, some grease, and you've got some oil for your chain, copper grease to stop things seizing on, and the drill just for putting the front disc rotor bolts in. It's much quicker. So first things first, just cut off all the packaging and get it all separated down so that it looks like a bicycle. Be careful when you detach the handlebars from the frame that you're not scratching anything and you're not snagging cables and pulling them away. So just remove them gently, bring them around to the front of the bike, make sure the cables are all lined up in the right places, and I just let it gently rest at the front of the fork there. So I tend to leave the packaging on the fork at this stage because it just protects the fork from any chips and scratches. I mean, at the moment pretty much all the packaging can be removed by hand. You'll need a set of side cutters. I tend not to use a knife because with a knife you can run it down the frame and scratch it, so you don't want that with your brand new bike, do you? Put your stem on. Just undo the top cap. Pop your stem on the top. At this stage you can have a look at your spacers. There's two spacers on here. 1, 2. I tend to, it will come like that with the two stacked on top of each other. I tend to put one on the top and one on the bottom, and that gives you the option to change the stem height at a later date. Obviously, if you knew what height you wanted it at, you could trim the steerer to length at the moment. But so just do up this bolt, hold the fork right at the bottom. You'll notice there's a bit of a wiggle, hear a little bit of a knocking sound there. Just gently do it up till it stops knocking, and just nip it. Don't even hang on it at all. All that's doing is just preloading the bearing system, and eventually what you'll do is tighten up these two bolts to clamp the whole system together. So that actually doesn't do any clamping, that's just for preloading the bearings. Alright, now we can take the rest of the packaging off the fork. Remove the Mexel. Or on some bikes would have a front quick release. And just have a quick scan over the bike to make sure you haven't missed anything. Don't know if you've noticed, but on this bike straight away there's a cable routing issue with the front brake. So, the correct routing for your front brake cable is have the front brake cable in front of all the other cables on the bike, for starters, and the cable needs to come down here, in against the fork leg, and the caliper attaches like that. So the cable comes down in here, and then you just cable tie at the top here. The reason why you run the cable inside the fork leg is so that if you crash the bike and come down on the outside of the fork, you're not going to slice your brake cable in half. So you'll be able to get up. The fork might be a bit scuffed, but you'll be able to get up, dust yourself off, and ride on. Wind the bolts all the way in till they're snug, and then back them off a turn so the caliper sits nice and loosely. Makes it easier to get the front wheel in and line it up the first time. There's a small brake pad spacer here. This is just to keep the brakes from closing up in transit, because if you pull the lever without the brake disc in there, they'll close together and you won't be able to get the brake disc back in there. Let's start by getting our bars in the right position. Just loosen off the stem bolts. I don't know if you can see it there, there's a little set of lines which help you line up the bars centrally in the stem, and generally that that line will be at the front of the stem when the bar's in the right position. Fortunately in the UK now, all bicycles must come fitted with a bell. I tend to take them off myself. If you wish to leave it on there, it's entirely up to you. So sight down the fork, line up the handlebars and the fork, and tighten the steerer clamp bolts. So, your front brake cable at the moment is unsecured. It's going to flap about all over the place. There's a little notch on the back of these forks just here to locate a zip tie into. So just pop it around the back there, we'll tie it into position. This bike comes with a constant cable outer, so it means it's got just these little cable guides which fix together with a little clip on there. You can either use the little clip, or if you feel like it, just chuck a cable tie through there to tie them off. They're going to be both just as secure, so whatever you want to do really. Right then, let's get some front wheel action going. Front wheel will have two big plastic things. You can throw them away, or you could keep them for your wheel bags if you're ever going to transport your bike. Position your disc on there. So the writing outermost on the disc. One side's blank, the other side's got writing on. Also has arrows on here to show you where the rotating direction is on the disc. So it needs to go that way. Pop that on the wheel. It's always useful to have something to lean against. You've got your 6 bolts. For speed, I use a power drill with the Torx head in there already. If you've got a Torx setting on your drill, just set it nice and low. You just zip in the bolts in and then nip them up later with a proper hand tool. If you are using this method, be very careful not to cross thread these bolts. There we go. And then you can just do the final torquing up with a proper hand tool. The bolt torque for these is 6.2 Newton meters if you want to use a torque wrench, but usually just using the long arm of a Torx key will tighten them up sufficiently. So the maxle, it's going to go into the wheel and it's probably going to sit there for quite a long time. It's always worth putting a bit of copper slip or grease on the surfaces there. Just stop it seizing up and stop any water getting in as well. Put your front wheel in the bike, hopefully. You might have to give the caliper a little wiggle just to get it to come sit home fully. And just tighten up the front wheel. And lock the quick release over. And that's not going to come loose now. Front brake. As you can see, front caliper's still loose. It's moving around. To centre it up, just give the wheel a bit of a spin, drag the brake, hold it on firm, and then just nip these bolts up. All the time while holding the brake lever. And it just keeps the front caliper centred. And hopefully, the front brake won't rub. So you can double check your stem fork alignment and bars. Just stand with the front wheel between your knees, and then you can make any fine-tune adjustments you want here. These stem bolts don't need to be hung on. Nip them up, and just an extra quarter turn with the Allen key is sufficient. If you do them up too tight, you can deform the steerer and you can damage the stem as well.